Welcome to Nest Egg Narratives, the podcast exploring the future of credit unions. We sit down with leaders shaping the industry to uncover what it takes to serve members in a changing world. I'm William Glass, CEO and co-founder of Ostrich, and your host for today's show. Steve, welcome to the podcast. Excited to have you on.
Glad to be here, Will.
I heard you on the CEO panel that was hosted up in Huntsville through the league in December, and you shared some insights. You've been with Alabama Credit Union since 1998, I believe you took over.
Correct.
And so you've seen some things that have changed, and you shared some really awesome stories about the credit union industry. You've helped Alabama Credit Union grow and thrive.
I will start out by saying, though, that the most important thing that I have learned over time as a leader, whether it be here or in my previous position at the Alabama Credit Union League, is it's not about you, it's about the people you bring in. And giving them the resources they need to be successful. Get the right people, give them the resources, and trust them to do a good job. That is what I have done my whole career, because I'm not really that smart, but I'm that smart.
That's a great place to start. How do you empower the people that you work with, members, employees? How do you, like you said, it's the folks that you brought in around them and helping them be successful. How do you do that as a leader?
My dad really helped form my work ethic and the way I do things. He was career military, and when he retired after 25 years, he was a lieutenant colonel, so he'd been in leadership roles the whole time. He was at World War II, he was in Korea. But when he retired, he came to the University of Alabama, got his teaching certificate, and then taught high school for about 20 years in Coleman, Alabama. I saw how hard he worked, number one. But also, he would say to me often that if you're a leader, it's not about you, it's about the people you lead. I grasped that early on. If you can't trust them to do whatever the job is, then you've hired the wrong people. And so I've hired the wrong people a couple of times. But there have been few that I would say were mistakes. And the rest of them, we've got a team here now that's, most of them been here 15 years. We celebrated our annual meeting last night, and one of the ladies predated me here. She's been here 40 years. She's retiring this year. What he taught me from a leadership standpoint and from a work ethic standpoint early on, I think has been invaluable.
Absolutely. Having that work ethic, and then also being able, like you said, to lead. It's easy to say that, hey, you should make sure that you empower your employees, but what does that actually look like in practice?
You just have to turn loose. I think my job at this point over the last few years has been to make sure that we have a good strategy and that we have the tactics that address that strategy, get the right people in place, and then let them do their job. And I long ago gave up micromanaging. And there's some people have real trouble with that. I did maybe a little at first, but after a while, the job gets so big you cannot micromanage it if you wanted to. And number two, then that strangles the organization if you do that. I just taught myself, okay, do check-ins, find out what's going on, and I do want to know what's going on. But I just trust the people that are doing those jobs, that they're telling me the right thing and tell me what's accurate, and we're moving in the right direction according to our strategy and our goals. So that's a pretty general answer, but that's the way it is.
Fair enough. Well, it's that kind of idea of your job's you need to know what's going on, and then how do you remove roadblocks so that your team can execute, because that's what they're good at, right?
That's it.
That's why you've got somebody that knows what to do with marketing, or chief lending officer, right? They're the ones that are experts in that.
Exactly. Now, I've experienced people over the years that they just could not turn loose of things, and they were not successful leaders. People would get tired of that micromanagement, and if they were good, they'd go somewhere else. I certainly don't want that happening around here. And like I said at the beginning, I'm not that smart anyway, so I hire smart people and let them do their job instead of interfering with them,
Well, I don't know about that, Steve. You've led Alabama Credit Union, seen some tremendous growth since 1998, so I don't know if that's accurate. You obviously know what you're doing and are smart to be able to lead an organization over multiple decades.
I know enough.
Point.
Okay?
Fair enough.
I know enough.
Fair enough. Well, speaking of which, Steve, how did you get involved in credit unions? What brought you into the credit union industry?
When I went to school here at Alabama, and I got my master's degree, and my master's was in finance and economics, so I knew I wanted to be in I wasn't interested in investment banking, so I figured something in the retail banking space would be attractive. And I liked the personal side of it. I always liked talking to bank customers or credit union members and helping them solve their financial challenges. So I went to work first with an organization that doesn't exist anymore. It was a savings and loan in Birmingham. And I worked there for 6 years and enjoyed it. I learned a lot. This was from 74 to 80. And you may recall that savings and loans got in real trouble in the early 80s. And they did because there was an incredible acceleration of interest rates. And I was at a place called Jefferson Federal. It was located downtown Birmingham. We had a lot of mortgages on the books at 4 and 5%. And we were paying 15 and 17% for CDs. And that's a recipe for disaster. But I got to know our examiner, who came in pretty well. I can't remember his name now, but we were out having a beer after work one night, and he told me he was leaving the FSLIC. I said, well, really, what's going on? He said, if you saw what I saw, you'd be getting out too. He said, these institutions are going down the tubes. He said, find something else. So ironically, it wasn't 2 weeks later, I was on a fishing trip with a couple of buddies and happened to be paired with a guy I'd never met before who worked at what is now Amherst Credit Union in Birmingham. He got to talk to me about credit unions, and he said, I know of a job available, and it was at the Alabama Credit Union League. And a couple of months later, that's where I was. So it was kind of an accidental thing, but advice from the examiner, I'd have left anyway at some point, obviously, but that got me out the door early and into a position that I think I really did well in. I worked at the league for 18 years, and the favorite part of it, I got to do strategic planning and business plan for a lot of small to medium-sized credit unions, and got to know everybody in the industry, and it was just great. It prepped me very well for this job.
Absolutely, yeah. So you already had that interest in being somewhere involved in the financial sector, and then get that timely notice from an examiner or somebody that's looking across the industry and says, Steve, it might be a good time to pack your bags.
I'll just say this, and then we move back. When I came here, I joined this credit union when I was in school. And way back in 1972, when the job came open, it was a natural thing for me. My first car loan was here, and get this, in 1972, I bought a 1967 Pontiac GTO, and financed it here at the credit union. And I sure wish I still had it.
I bet, yeah.
It's a $150,000 car now.
No, right?
But it was a natural thing for me. When I walked out of the building the first fall day and heard the band playing right behind the office building, Yay, Alabama, I thought, I am at home.
There you are. I love that. Well, definitely want to dive into Alabama credit, but I'm curious, your time at the league, like you said, you spent 18 years there. You got to work with small, medium-sized credit unions doing strategic planning. What were some of the things that you learned that prepared you to step into the role when it opened up at Alabama Credit Union?
There was a lot of that. We would have to address financial challenges some of the credit unions were having. We did this program called the Developing Credit Union Program there at the league, where we would go into a smaller, medium-sized credit union that wanted to grow and wanted to make sure they could survive on into the future. And we would design a program for them. Here are the services you need. Here's how you implement them. We would give them the policies, all that. And so I was in charge of that program and got to see this implementation across multiple credit unions of different sizes. So that was very useful to me when I actually stepped into this role here, because I knew a lot of I'm not an accountant, okay? Not an accountant. But I knew enough that helped me so that I could understand when something happened here, I knew what it would affect over there. But the other thing, I went to a gazillion board meetings of credit unions of all sizes. There were certain CEOs that had a really good board relationship. And I watched how they managed that. And then my boss at the league, a guy named Gary Walter, he always had a way about dealing with a volunteer board of directors. I think that helped me as well. I stepped in here following a guy who had been here 36 years, and I'm just the second CEO here. They were used to him. And so I had to pretty quickly get them used to me and build that trust. One of the first things that I did when I got here in May of 98, we had an opportunity to make a bid on the business at Mercedes. They had been using a bank, back then it was AmSouth, now Regions, and they didn't feel like they were adequately serving their line workers, the hourly folks, so they really wanted a credit union. I had to go to the board and pitch a proposal on, here's what we want to offer them. I had to take that to 3 meetings to get it, and it was just because we don't know you yet, I got more questions, and then ultimately though they said go with it, and ultimately we got it. I had learned a lot about board relationships over those years. I would say to anybody, we've got the best board around. We had our annual meeting last night. They're sharp, they're engaged, they understand our business, and they trust management. Heck, Will, one day I walked in there about 5 years after I'd been here, and I said, I want to open 2 branches, one in Foley and one in Orange Beach. They were like, what? And I remember one director asked me, well, how many members do we have in Baldwin County? I was prepared for that question. I said, we have 7. And they said, we're going to open 2 branches for 7 members? And I said, well, we think more people will join. And we had a plan that we could get out of the market without it being a bloodbath if we had to, but they trusted us to do it. Now we've got 11 offices in South Alabama. I'm going back to that. The board trust is really important.
It's really important. Well, that makes sense. What are some of the things you can do to cultivate that, right? You said you saw, when you were at the Alabama League, you saw people that did it really well. How do you actually develop a really good relationship with the board? How would you encourage other CEOs to build those relationships?
A couple of things. I think the more information they get, the better. They've got a fiduciary responsibility there, so I try to make sure every board packet has anything they might possibly want in the way of information in order to make decisions. When we present, like the South Alabama thing, we had all the demographics, we had where are the other credit, there wasn't another credit union anywhere in South Alabama, so that was easy, but I want them to feel like we're giving them everything they need to make an educated decision. The other thing is that, well, no surprises. No surprises. If there's something that's going downhill, I tell them early. I don't want to show up at a meeting and say, well, I should have told you this 6 months ago, but really here's what's happened. We recently had a loan program that didn't go like we wanted to, but we told them early on and often, this is the program, we probably shouldn't have done this. We thought it was going to go differently, but here's the issue now. And I think they appreciate that, and that builds that trust factor.
Absolutely, yeah, that communication is key, right? Whether it's giving them enough information so that they can actually be helpful, right? Because you want your board to help you make decisions and push back and pressure test, is this the right thing? And then, as you said, if something's not going right, maybe they have a way to help support or have some ways that you can turn it around. Or if it's just, hey, we got to close a loan program, it happens, right? Right. We don't bat 100%, 1,000 every at bat.
Right. And even when things hadn't been as rosy as we thought they were going to be, if you've been upfront with them and kept them informed, they're going to trust you to do the next decision. They're not going to say, well, our board has never said, well, y'all screwed that one up, so we're not going to let you do this. It's not like that. It's just not like that. I communicate with them several times during the month. It's not just a board meeting thing. If I see an article that I bet several of them find this interesting, I shoot that article to them. I write a fairly lengthy written report every month, so it's not just what I say at the board meetings. And most of it's for the board, but I also want, when the examiners come in here, I want them to see that we are keeping that board engaged and that we're not hiding anything. They have got the information they need to fulfill their responsibilities.
I love that. Yeah, there's a benefit as well, like you said, on the examiner side too. And then also,
exactly.
It just, the more informed they are, the more helpful they can be as a board.
And we got a great group.
So, Steve, one of the things that I read, there's actually an article that just came out in Business Alabama, and it talked about how, and this might go back to that Mercedes plant, but I think it was quoted that you signed up 500 accounts in the first week. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. That just proves how starved they were for a credit union there. That was back when they only had about 1,000 or 1,200 employees. They've got 7,000 or 8,000 now. But when we went in there, we had everybody that could hold a pen there waiting. Our office wasn't ready on site yet. So we had people just at tables in the cafeteria, and the line stretched across the cafeteria every day. 500 accounts. And we were not prepared here in Tuscaloosa. We have one office in Tuscaloosa. Mercedes got paid on Thursday. They didn't have mandatory direct deposit yet. So every Thursday afternoon, we were absolutely inundated here. And in the old main office, line out through the drive up, we have police directing traffic on Bryant Drive. And I went to the board and I said, we got to find another office. So we rented a little office up on McFarland Boulevard just to take some of the pressure off until we could get open out at Mercedes. That's been a 25-year relationship now. I don't have a current list, the number, but last time I looked, we got 14,000 members that have been through, that are coded Mercedes. They may no longer work there, but
I understand. So it's been a very fruitful relationship, it sounds like, over the years.
And I'll tell you what else it's done. It has opened the door for us in other places. When you go to an Airbus in Mobile and you say, we're the credit union for the University of Alabama and for Mercedes-Benz, that's kind of impressive. And so we're their credit union. The Austell Shipbuilding is another large group in Mobile. They're a defense contractor. They got over 4,000 employees. We're their credit union. And part of that is because of the image it presents when you serve a company like Mercedes.
Absolutely. Yeah, leaning into those relationships, like you mentioned, I definitely want to talk about this too, the university side, but also the employers that you're partnered with.
Right.
Is there anything different about leading a credit union that originally was chartered for a university and has expanded, or how has that either been helpful, the opportunities, challenges associated with a credit union that was tied to a university?
When I came here, I knew we were the credit union for the university and the credit union for UAH in Huntsville. We knew that. But it was at a time that technology just was coming around that was going to impact our business. Online banking was just getting popular, and we knew we had to have that. I felt like we had to be more convenient. We just, with one office here and one office in Huntsville, and I think we had ATM at Ferguson, the Student Center, and ATM at the branch, and one ATM at the branch in Huntsville. We had to be more convenient, and we could not do that just serving the university community.
Right.
So we had to broaden it. We broadened it first with a few of these groups like Mercedes, and there was a big CD and tape plant here called JVC. JVC had a big operation. They're closed now. So we added a few of those to bolster our numbers, but then ultimately we became a community chartered credit union, and we're in about 20-something counties now. We have 38 locations.
38 locations.
It's all the same. You're serving members. One thing we have not done is we have not abandoned those partnerships. We're still very aggressive around the university community. We are a big partner with Crimson Tide Sports Marketing. We actually have the University of Alabama Alumni Credit Card Program. We took that from Bank of America a few years ago. Several of our board members are still UA folks. In addition to the main branch, which is not technically on campus, but it's 100 yards from it. We've got a branch in the Student Center and ATMs all over campus. So we maintain that while we still do the other stuff and go out into the communities and do member stuff there. The members aren't different. They're still consumers.
Yeah, I love that. You use the university relationship as a way to grow. You haven't abandoned it, but also found here's other opportunities for us to continue.
Other ways to grow, yes.
Absolutely. And the University of Alabama has also grown too, which doesn't hurt as well.
I was going to say that when I mentioned that earlier. When did Sorensen leave? 2001 or 2. The whole administration changed over there, and and the university's now doubled in student enrollment, more than doubled. And so that certainly hadn't hurt. We do a lot of enrollment at freshman orientation. One thing actually you would find, you might find this unusual, 60% of the university's incoming freshman class are from out of state. Actually, we do better with out-of-state students than we do with in-state. And that's because a lot of these out-of-state students are dealing with a local bank in Newark or in Chicago, and they don't have a local option, so we get it. And they really like the university credit card that we have too. So
that makes sense. Yeah, if you don't have a branch or you need access, you want to have something that's local, and y'all are there, and it makes sense that out of state would actually be really beneficial. I can think of the times that I've been prompted to switch banks or credit unions. Like I moved to Fort Myers and opened one there, and then moved to New York, and then moved back to Alabama. So those are really good opportunities to find folks.
Right.
Steve, we talked a little bit about it before we started recording, but I'd love to dive in on financial literacy. What is your approach, and has been Alabama Credit Union's approach to financial literacy and supporting financial education?
First of all, there's a tremendous need for it. And we'd see it in freshman orientation. A lot of those kids come in and they've never had a financial work. Their mom or dad gives them a credit card and said, just don't overdo it. Early on, when we first really started serving students, I was at freshman orientation, and most of the time we talked to the parents because they're the ones that understand it. And
right.
But occasionally the students would wander up, want to know what kind of giveaways we have. And I remember talking to 3 guys one day, and they said, well, what do you do? And I told them. They looked a little confused. So I said, well, where's your checking account? They said, I don't have a checking account. I said, you don't have a checking account? No. Do you have a debit card? Oh, yeah, I got a debit card. So they didn't know what a checking account was. So, I mean, we already knew there was a need out there. We see it when people's accounts get negative, or checking accounts get negative. They don't understand how to manage that. We've tried a lot of different things, and we teach junior achievement in a lot of the schools, and I personally have taught that for years in elementary schools, and so we're trying to give some basic information there. Our goal is to have a certified financial counselor in every branch. We're a little short right now. We've got 31 or 32 financial counselors out of 38 locations. So what we want to be equipped to do is when that member comes in and I don't know what to do, my account's upside down, how do I fix this? And we can help them with their budgeting. If they have to go to an outside resource, we can help them with that. But we teach classes at both universities. We've got a program, are you familiar? It's not Bazing, it's Bonsai.
Yes, familiar with Bonsai.
And we have used that program over the years as well for elementary school. We've offered that to elementary schools throughout our footprint. We offer that to schools and we pay for that. One program that was kind of unique is we've taught classes here at the university for years, off and on, but at some point one of the banks came in and said we'll teach this blanket program, whatever, and wound up being all online. And the usage by the students here was virtually zero. I was working with one of the guys in Student Life. I said, well, what if we did something different? Who would they respond to best? And I'm going to do this online stuff. And he said, well, I don't know. I said, well, would they respond to a peer better than they would respond to a 70-year-old guy? And he said, well, probably. So we've set up, now it's been about 5 years now, a program where we pay to certify up to 10 UA students who will then be available for peer counseling. So if a student gets in financial difficulty or whatever, he goes to the university and they assign one of the folks we've paid to have trained, and that person sits with them and does the same thing we do for members. I can't say the usage has been what we hoped it would be, but it's just one more attempt, one more way to try to get that done.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's different opportunities and different programs that you can do, right? How do you figure out how do you serve college students and how do you work with elementary students, and there's so many just different opportunities, and that seems like you've taken a lot of different initiatives in order to help promote that financial literacy. Are there any interesting kind of like stories that have come out of some of those programs, whether it's junior achievement that you've taught or anything that's kind of stood out?
The junior achievement, the one thing I remember, I taught for years, I taught the same fifth grade class for the same teacher, and I don't know how they do it. That's what I could not. After a day, just one day, I am worn flat out. I just don't know how they do it. I can tell you one, and this was funny. I mentioned that first week we were at Mercedes. One of the Mercedes employees looked me up, and he said, I was told to give you this envelope. And in the envelope was a note and a resume for a lady who worked at another credit union in Birmingham that I had known through some of my planning work I'd done when I was at the league. I'd known her, and she wrote me a note, and she said that it would be her desire to come to work for us and manage our Mercedes branch till the end of her career. And she did. 20 years she was out there. Her name's Shelley. But the guy who handed me that said, this lady has meant more to me than any of my family has, because I was in a mess and she helped me straighten it out. Financial mess. I've heard those stories countless times over the years. And when we first got to Mercedes, they'd been in operation about 4 years. Those people were making more money than they'd ever made in their life. And they were spending 50% more than what they made. And so there's a ton of stories from out there of people who Shelley or the other folks that we have helped get them on the right financial path.
I think that highlights the power of credit unions. I'm curious from your perspective, right? Like, what makes credit unions special or different when you think about, how credit unions fit into the overall financial ecosystem?
Well, there's a different dynamic. When you're in a bank, they may want to give you good service. I'm sure they do. All banks subscribe to that. The ultimate goal, though, is that's going to translate into profit for the stockholder. We know that. But when a member comes in, they own the place. And we preach that around here. This person standing in front of you is an owner of this credit union. Treat them like they are exactly that. I just have always felt that way. That's why I was attracted to credit unions when it didn't take me long after working at the Alabama Credit Union League to become attracted to that philosophy. I think that's it.
Yeah. Just remember that, the person walking in owns it. It sounds like, especially early on, going after Mercedes and how you've focused on, expansion of finding these different opportunities. How do you think about the future of credit unions and finding more opportunities to serve, and what are some of the things that, as we look forward at credit unions in particular, what are some of the opportunities in the future that you see?
I think it's going to be tougher to affiliate with employers, to be honest. Back when we got Mercedes, then credit unions had not all expanded their fields of membership, so that now anybody can join a credit union or multiple credit unions, so it's not quite as unique an employer benefit. Although when we go into a place now, we go in and say we can do financial literacy training for you. That's one of the things that we do very aggressively, like at Airbus and some of the others. So that's a little different, but I think as banks consolidate and get larger and larger, and they're consolidating at a record pace right now, they tend to close branches and they tend to concentrate on more affluent sections of the marketplace. I think there'll be opportunity for credit unions there. I really do. We've got several branches in some rural communities here, like in Fayette and in Jasper and others. We do really well there, really well there. And there's only one bank, and when it used to be a local bank, that was one thing, but then it's bought out and the whole thing changes.
Yeah,
So I think there's opportunity out there. I think it may be a little different than what we've seen in the past.
That makes sense. And I believe you acquired a small community bank a few years back. Is that right? Is that part of that strategy of seeing an opportunity?
Yes, it was. Yes. Now, there are other banks in Jasper, don't get me wrong, but this was one. It was a former Mercedes loan, actually. So
there we go, full circle.
Yeah, kind of. And we have, I think, successfully transitioned almost, I bet 95% of their customers are now satisfied credit union members.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so what was that like? Because maybe there's other credit union leaders that are thinking, or there's an opportunity for a bank acquisition, or maybe it's even other small credit unions merging. What was that process like? Any lessons learned?
We've merged. We've done 10, I think, credit union mergers.
Okay.
And the bank purchase is just totally different. The lesson learned is you better have experienced help to help you evaluate the purchase price and what you're getting. You better do good, exceptional due diligence. And then the process just is so different. The legal process, you got to get the FDIC to approve it, and then you got to get the NCUA to approve it, and you're paying premiums for the most part. So all of that makes it a different animal.
I understand. So sounds like credit union mergers a lot simpler. I mean, not simple, but simpler than acquiring a bank.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've done several of those, like I said, about 10. But now on the bank side, we've looked at 4 or 5 and just said, no, this one, we don't like their loan portfolio, or they're wanting too much money for it, or in one case just recently we looked at one and I would really kind of like to have done it, but we already got 2 offices in that community, and why would we add a third and have to pay a premium for it? So anyhow.
Right. That makes sense. So you mentioned a couple of things that you look at. What are some of the reasons why you might acquire a bank or merge with another credit union? You said balance sheet, looking at loan portfolios, getting access to a new community, it sounds like, is part of it.
That's part of it for sure. It gives us a leg up in a community we might want to have, like in Jasper. We're in Fayette, which is here, here, and Coleman is here, and Jasper's right here. And it was a natural geographic fit for us to do that. In other cases, it might just be that they have some talent that we are attracted by. But half the time it's been, we're a credit union, and we believe in the credit union philosophy and all of that. These people that are being served by a small credit union, they deserve to have a credit union. And rather than let them liquidate and go away, we'd rather take them in and let us continue to serve them. We've got one that we're actually talking to right now that I can't say where or any of that yet, but the person happens to be, that's the CEO of the credit, happens to be a very good friend of mine. And I'm not going to let that go anywhere else. Okay?
Fair enough.
So some of them are emotional decisions, and some of them really are more financial, strategic. This is a good decision, too.
Right.
But it starts with the other.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. They've all got to blend, right? It could be a great financial decision, but if you don't emotionally feel good about it too, then maybe there's something there, vice versa, right? It's got to be both.
Yeah.
It's got to be both. Steve, what's some of the best leadership advice you've received?
I mentioned that about what my dad said, and that I would have to say is it. Now, you listed on your list of potential areas to discuss was what books or podcasts or whatever you list. I've read a bunch of those 7 things and blah, blah.
7 habits of highly effective people, and those, the Dale Carnegie.
I feel like I learn more by talking to people. And I have a network of folks. If I have an issue, I'll call, and most of them are CEOs. As a matter of fact, there's a group of us, I think there's 8 or 9, it's 8 or 9 of us that are either current or now retired CEOs, and we get together every 2 or 3 months. And if I got an issue and I'm not quite sure what I think about it, I'll call one of them, and they do the same. That's what makes Creighton's a little bit different too. I hope this carries forward with the next generation of leaders, but I just have always valued the affiliation and the association, and I learn a lot from that.
I love that. Yeah, the network, right? Yeah, who can I call that's been through this that might be able to give me a different perspective or help me just think through some challenges that we're facing. I love that, building out that CEO network.
We had people here today from a credit union up in North Alabama was looking at our call center. And most of the times we don't compete. But in this case, we're in a couple of the same geographic areas, but we get along.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Matter of fact, the CEO of that credit union and I hunt together and fish together and stuff like that. We're just good friends. So anyhow.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I think that is something that makes the credit union industry different, obviously, especially in the financial world, where it is very cutthroat on the banking sector, or that you don't necessarily have that. As you mentioned, some of the things that have changed with credit unions is that there's a lot more open field of memberships. How do you see that evolving? Are you seeing different kind of changes with new leaders? Or?
It does worry me. There are so many retirements right now. Of that group of 7 or 8, about a year from now, only one of those people will still be working. But now I know the lady who is going to succeed me, she's been in credit unions for 25 or more years, and one of her goals is to develop her own network of other CEOs where they can share ideas, and she's already started that. I do worry, particularly if credit unions hire people from the banking community, that cooperative nature is not normal for them.
Right. You know? They didn't grow up with that. They didn't come from the industry, so what they're used to is the banking.
Exactly. That worries me a little bit. But anyway, she's developing her network, and I'm hopeful that that'll happen.
We also got to hear from her a little bit on the CEO panel. She wasn't technically on the panel just yet, but she had some really good responses. So it's exciting new leadership.
She's a sharp lady.
She is. Steve, one of the things that I didn't ask you this early on, but I'm just curious. You knew you wanted to go into the financial industry, it sounds like, relatively early on in your career, and you go that. But, like, how was your relationship with money growing up? Do you have an early memory? Like, talk to me a little bit about that. How did you kind of develop your own financial?
And I grew up on a farm in Coleman County. So my dad told me, he was teaching school. We had our farm. My uncle's farm was next, and my grandfather's farm was next. And they were real farmers. My uncle grew sweet potatoes, biggest sweet potato grower in Alabama. My grandfather, he had livestock and corn and cotton, but he was also a carpenter and a home builder. So when I was growing up, my dad told me early on, he said, I will pay for 2 years of your college, but you got to figure out the other 2 years. And he said, now I'll pay your first 2. Oh, and by the way, he said, I'll never buy you a car either. That's all. So that was what his dad had done to him. So anyhow, I got into the pig business. My grandfather helped me build fences, and he gave me my first breeder sow, and that was when I was 11. And so then at one time I had 200 pigs running around, but that's how I paid for college. So I had to manage the finances of my operation, such as it was. It wasn't real sophisticated, but anyway, I had an account at the local bank, Parker Bank in Coleman. That was just natural to me because I had the goal. I knew how much I had to have by the end of my second year in college. And then when I got to Alabama, applied and got hired as a grader for some of the business school faculty, and I've developed really good relationships there. As a matter of fact, one of the guys I work for lives in South Alabama now, and I see him in our Foley office from time to time. He headed up the Bureau of Economic Research, and I worked for them for a year or two. But anyway, so that just came natural to me. And kids today, not so much. A lot of them don't ever really have part-time jobs, and so maybe it's just not as natural to them. I don't know. I guess maybe that led me into I never have linked the pig business to credit union stuff. But I was attracted to it. Oh, guess who taught me money in banking, by the way?
Who?
You know who David Bronner is?
Oh, yeah.
David Bronner was my money and banking teacher.
That's awesome.
When I was a sophomore here.
That's really cool.
I can't say he was all that memorable, but he was. He was.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I was going to try to come up with some bad pun about, making the bacon early on in your...
Oh, there you go.
There you go. That was the key.
I wish I'd thought of that.
Yeah, you use that, play around with it. I'm sure you can workshop a good...
I'll figure a way to use that.
A good line.
Yeah.
Steve, this has been a really fun conversation, and I appreciate you sharing so much of what you've learned. I guess, is there any final words of wisdom or just thoughts or anything you want to leave the audience with, whether it's about the credit union industry, leading, or just anything that you want to share?
Well, the one thing, and I've been telling folks around here, is I can see the end of the road from a career standpoint. Credit unions are a wonderful career. They really are. I got to see it from two sides. Loved the league side. I got to work with so many different credit unions, and that was just a fantastic learning and growth experience there. And here, when I came here, we were 75 million, and now we're 2 billion. Think about how much you learned during that little path. But I tell folks here that this is a great career path. You have to be patient. You just have to be. With the right opportunity, it could be as fulfilling a career as Alpha. Now, you're not going to become Elon Musk working at a credit union. But you can make a good living and have a very fulfilling career. And
absolutely.
That would be what I would say. Then I would also say maintain that cooperative relationship with other credit unions.
Maybe that's the competitive advantage when you think about the credit union industry.
Hey, Will, how many banks would let another bank customer come into their lobby and do transactions? Our shared branch network is the ultimate form of cooperation between credit unions. And our members are going into a credit union branch in Mobile to do business because it's more convenient. I have to trust that they're not going to steal them, right?
Right.
So that's the ultimate cooperative endeavor. So
absolutely.
I would say just maintain that, build a network, enjoy a great career.
Love that. Steve, you actually reminded me of something that I did want to ask you about. When I was researching this, looked at how you were adding different services over the years, and I believe one of them was the trust department. And if I'm not mistaken, over at the time, you had a quote about saying something of, why would I send folks to a bank when we could be serving them in-house? Right. I'm curious how you've thought about adding product services and keeping folks and building the products and services that Alabama Credit Union offers so that you can really truly service all of the members' needs.
It was not, we added a trust service, but that was of more critical nature is the actual wealth management side of things. We started that 20 years ago, and I never intended for that to be a profit center. That's, if we make money on that, and I think we do make some money off of that, but the main thing we want to do there is build that relationship with the member. If they start out as a Mercedes and they build up their 401k and it's time to retire, well, they may want something more than CDs at the credit union. They may want to have some market exposure or what else. Why would we not want to have that piece of that as well? And so, again, the goal there was maintaining the relationship, not necessarily generating income.
Right. It was the right thing to do for the member.
Yes.
And
yes,
it wasn't going to be a big loser cost center, right? It wasn't going to be a big cost center, but it was going to really improve the experience.
Yeah, and it's grown so much now. We've got 3 full-time advisors and then support personnel for them. It's just been a remarkable success for us. But again, I don't really think I need to look at that. I probably need to look at an income statement. I know we make a little money off of it, but again, that's not the goal.
Absolutely.
It's service to the members.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Steve. I really appreciate you sitting down. If there are other credit union leaders that have questions or want to reach out, if you're open to that, how can folks connect with you?
Anytime. 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 And they do already, so I don't mind. You know what a mistake I made early on when I got here?
What was that?
I gave too many members my cell phone number. And they call me. Actually, I kind of like it. But I got to figure what I'm going to do with them after October. Do I give them June Landrum's cell phone number? I don't know. I have to think about that.
Right, exactly. It seemed like a good idea at the time, and then now you get a call at all the times. But no, that's fun. It's a way to keep a read on what's going on in the credit union too, right?
And what did I say earlier? They own the place. Right?
They do.
So
boss is calling,
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate the time.
Glad you will. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. Gave me a chance to kind of get my thoughts together and reminisce a bit. So that's good. I appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in to Nest Egg Narratives, powered by Ostrich, the platform helping credit unions grow membership and drive financial wellness. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to follow and share with a fellow credit union leader.